Yes, absolutely, but always check with your local building authority first. That being said, some tuff block users will use tuff block in combination with concrete in-ground footings to tie down their projects, for example in each corner, or use tuff block as an intermediate support. We always suggest you check with your local building inspector as a rule of thumb before construction of any new project. That being said, most building inspectors have an exemption for structures that are less than a certain size, for example 100 square feet. Therefore, if your structure area is less than specified, you don't need to seek any approval. It is completely dependent on the project. As a general rule of thumb, if you are supporting joists directly on tuff blocks, you will need to support joists with a tuff block of 60-inch intervals. Joists will need to be spaced at a distance appropriate to the finishing material. For example, it is recommended that some decking timber be spaced at 16-inch centers. It is always best to check with your timber or material supplier for material-specific recommendations. As an example, a low-level deck, 3 meters by 3 meters, would require 21 tuff blocks for the above configuration. That is 3 tuff blocks per 118-inch joists, 7 joists spread 16 inches apart. If you intend on using bearers on top of tuff blocks, joists are top of bearers, and then decking, finishing materials, or sheeting, less tuff blocks will be required. As an example, a low-level 3 by 3 meter deck would require bearers to be supported, say, every 1.5 meters. Bearers would be spaced every 1.5 meters to support the joists, so 3 tuff blocks per bearer, 3 bearers per 9 tuff blocks. The above measurements are a basic guide only. Refer to the tuff block installation guide as your material supplier to ensure correct spacing is maintained for structural integrity. In most cases, absolutely. Especially when you consider the time and effort taken to dig multiple holes and then mix the concrete to fill them back in, allow time to cure, etc. Not to mention the cost of buying the steel post supports and bags of concrete in the first place. Generally, a steel post support and 2 bags of concrete will set you back around $20 to $30. So even if you use a few more tuff blocks, you are still well ahead of the old conventional footing method. The tuff block product is based on the floating foundation system, designed to ensure the structure is able to move slightly if the ground was to move. That is what makes the floating foundation so safe. The structure is able to move slightly and independently of other structures as natural ground movement occurs. The tuff block construction method therefore avoids stresses that would otherwise see an extension from an existing structure fail. The system was originally designed for regions where the annual freezing and thawing of the ground meant that either 1, the ground was too hard to dig, or 2, with the constant shrinking, expansion, and movement of the ground, many fixed structures failed due to the inability to cope with the movement they sustained. The short answer is no. If you consider that a tuff block construction has similar or greater downward surface area than a standard concrete in-ground footing, then sinking will not be an issue, or at least no more than an issue than it would have been using the old method in the same soil. Tuff block should be installed on stable, compact earth. That is not to say that you need to compact the ground. If, however, the top surface is extremely loose, just take a layer or 2 away with a shovel and your tuff block will be on a nice and stable base for your project. The floating system, while relatively new to Australia since we introduced it back in 2011, has been a tried and true building system in North America since the late 1980s, with literally tens of millions of decks and other structures built using this system. Ground shrinking is absolutely something that needs to be considered. However, this is also the case for a traditional dig a hole and pour concrete installation. So, if your ground is particularly unstable, you need to consider this regardless of what installation method you choose. The great thing about TuffBlock is that it's far simpler to install more tuff blocks than it is to dig deeper, wider, more holes, and fill them with more concrete. In fact, the floating foundation system was developed for grounds that were heavily affected by freeze and thaw ground movements. If your grounds are particularly unstable, the floating foundation system, such as TuffBlock, is possibly a far better solution for you, as it keeps the structure independent from any surrounding fixed structure, allowing it to move and settle independently. Furthermore, you can very easily install far more tuff blocks to greatly increase the amount of support for the structure. Yes, simply level the ground under each tuff block and then level the structure above using extension posts supported in the pocket of the tuff block below. Refer to the instruction guide for more details. Alternatively, if the impenetrable surface is sloping at a severe angle, it may be worth considering using an alternative foundation support method. An individual tuff block is capable of supporting up to 1,700 pounds. The tuff block has been load tested to over 11,000 pounds. UV stabilizers have been included in the manufacturing process, which means TuffBlock is manufactured to the highest standards of any plastic products for use outdoors. However, like any plastic product, we recommend TuffBlock is not installed where it is exposed to direct sunlight, as this will reduce its service life to below 25 years. Please refer to the TuffBlock website for the warranty policy by visiting buildtuff.com. Like anything, you will need to prepare the site well and ensure there is no issues with erosion or wash away, no different to if you use concrete footings. Although it is very site specific, if you are worried about erosion, then we recommend reinforcing the base material. That said, sand is a great substrate as long as erosion isn't an issue. This is exactly why the floating foundation system was developed. It was developed originally for areas in North America where freeze and thaw ground movement is a major issue for traditional dig a hole and pour concrete structures. So, TuffBlock is a perfect solution. When the structure is required to be anchored, such as high wind areas, you do not need to anchor the individual tuff blocks. If necessary, you would anchor down the structure itself with a single point in the middle or at each corner. Methods include concreting down steel chain into a hole, or the use of earth anchors hammered down into the ground. Generally, the posts, joists, or bearers sit in the tuff block without requiring any fixing. However, to fix the block to the timber if required, it is super easy. As for the post staying upright, this is a function of the deck build itself. Your structure should be adequately designed and reinforced to ensure the posts are structurally sound and cross-braced. TuffBlock should be installed on a stable, undisturbed graded surface with well-draining subgrade material. If your soil is constantly wet and gets flooded, you would need to ensure you prepare the ground by introducing drainage, which could be done via gravel or additional drainage to remove the flooding. If the ground is particularly unstable, we would recommend increasing the number of tuff blocks supporting the structure.